Hey, this is the second episode of the Dresden Files podcast. Thanks for listening or watching or however you got here. My name is Alex Schechter, and these are my co-hosts, Justin,
I'm Justin.
Chris,
How's it going?
and the other Alex.
Hi, I'm the pretty one.
And once again, thanks to Marty G for the banner and logo. We really appreciate that. We're going to get right into it. Unfortunately, Ruth isn't here with us today. She might be joining us later. So big news broke like a week or two ago. We got the first line of peace talks. Justin, why don't you share what that is?
I totally just had it too. So basically, Butcher had done a tweet and he put out the first line of peace talks. So just warning, if you don't want to know what it is, as I told my wife, if you like being happy, maybe you shouldn't know. So now is a good time to skip for a second. But the line was, my brother ruined a perfectly good run by telling me Justine is pregnant. So, bum, bum, bum.
So that's Harry, narrating by saying, "My brother ruined a perfectly good run."
Right.
And I'm clarifying that because that confused me at first. I thought Jim Butcher was saying he had a brother who ruined a perfectly good run. So what do you guys think of that, Chris?
I don't believe there is such a thing as a perfectly good run.
Yeah, especially
It is a
for Harry.
fantasy book.
No, yeah, it came as a surprise because I distinctly remember something about the White Court being infertile, or maybe it was just the White King.
That's where Thomas came from. So, I mean, I agree because there's a lot of mythology where that's the case, right? And so that was one of my first thoughts, and I'm like, oh, wait, but that's where Thomas came from. So,
Right.
yeah.
I don't know where you guys got that because there's also Inari, who's younger than Thomas.
That's
So
true.
I
Well,
don't
yeah, like
see
all the Wraith
why.
kids.
Yeah, I wonder why that impressed upon me because that doesn't make sense. He has children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we know that. I mean, we're pretty sure, right, that that's the only way new White Court vampires get created is through the act of sexual intercourse.
Well, yeah, having kids, but then they also get to make their choice at puberty, so they have to feed, just like all the other courts. They have to feed before they're truly vampires, except for maybe Black. I don't know. We haven't really gotten into them
Hmm.
beyond, go read Dracula.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they never actually made that clear if it was actually a choice or not, because it's kind of hinted at that Thomas was never really given that choice, right? He kind of didn't know what was going to happen to him.
yeah, he didn't know, but that was robbed from him by Papa Wraith, if
Yeah.
I remember right, because they
Yeah.
talk about that in Blood Rights. So, and that's why Lara and Thomas were both very protective of Inari, and they wanted her to make that choice, whereas Papa Wraith hadn't let anybody else basically make that choice. So,
Yeah, that might have just been more not giving them the information. Like,
yeah, I agree with that.
they had sex and thus fed.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, if you don't tell a 15-year-old boy that if he has sex with someone, it's going to kill them, he's going to want to have sex.
And
Right.
sometimes,
And
even
you
if
find out afterwards.
Chris, what was that?
I said sometimes, even if you do, like,
Well, especially if they're a White Court vampire.
Right.
So I feel like I see a lot of parity between, or a lot of similarity between changes, the opening to changes, and this first line. Do you guys agree?
Kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, he's talking about a child and also talking about vampires inherently. But
Mm-hmm.
I had thought that there was a numbering of when the vampires become relevant. Like every third book, the vampires are a big thing,
It's
except for 15 because it gets trumped by Denarians.
right.
But 16 is not a multiple of 3, so it kind of confuses me as to where the book is actually going to go.
I think those are theories, and I think they're strong correlations. I don't know if that's word of Jim. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just ignorant on that one, but I know several people have put together timelines, and I mean the problem is once you get into the double digits, you do get numbers that start to overlap. So you've got your 5 would have been vampires or Denarians. Obviously, we know which one won out on that. Your multiples of 4 seem to be fairies usually, but it's not like Leah hasn't shown up in the odd book because she was in
I don't think fairies is a multiple
Grateful
of
Demon.
4
So,
because
so you've
small
got
favor.
well, yeah, but Small Favor is a Denarian book, really. Who in Small Favor shows up from the fairy courts? You have
Um,
Mab,
you
and
also
Mab.
have all the gruffs.
That's fair. Yeah. So I mean, that's why I'm saying it's not a strict correlation because Summer Night is a 4, Proven Guilty is a 4, Changes, but that's also a 3. So they went vampires there, right? And then 16, I think, is very clearly going to be well. Sorry. Um, Yeah, because I mean, it sort of breaks down with Cold Days as well. Cold Days is 14. Um, so I don't know. I never took it as a hard correlation. I thought it was an interesting thing, and I think the Denarians is a hard correlation at least so far.
Yeah,
And so
I think there's actually word Jim on that. That
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
always
there
book
is.
5. It's
Yeah,
always a Denarian book.
right.
yeah. And along with the vampires, people were counting the books that Elaine is in. She's in any form of squared number. She's in book 4, she's in book 9, and that would make it do that the next book, 16, Elaine will be in. But
Nice.
then there isn't another squared number.
Yeah.
So I would think that she comes into this book and then dies.
Oh no! Don't say
Don't,
that.
yeah, don't do that one because
Uh,
I think there's some unresolved. I think there's some unresolved stuff that she's potentially going to have some play in the BAT. But yeah, that sucks. That's a nice catch. So and
I feel
But then
terrible
if this is
catch.
true,
I
Right.
feel like anytime someone says either not Susan, either Murphy or Elaine is going to die, there's someone else saying, no, they can't die because he's already killed off so many women, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying,
and
in his life.
Butcher makes no illusions about that fact. Like he has flatly said that the only one that's guaranteed to make it all the way to the end is Harry because he's writing the books, and everybody else is there to make Harry suffer as painfully as possible.
It's just like
And so
you can't kill Elaine, come on. I'll be mad if Elaine gets killed.
it had seemed that book 16 was going to be working with Elaine a lot and all of the other political things. And she has that weird position of working with like the summer court previously and the
right.
Paranet. And then it just kind of gets into her, and then she dies at the end. And that's just what I thought the book was going to be. But with Justine's pregnant line, that kind of throws it off.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys think that part of the magical violence is going to be something that happens with Justine?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Especially after that. I mean, it shifts. It gives enough weight to go as far as to say that this might have as much to do with the White Court as with the Winter uh, Winter Court basically because like now that I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say because Thomas is still sort of the bastard child, right? He's still sort of the outcast, but having children is a way to prolong a family line. And if, the Scabies or the Malvoras decide that this is going to be their power play, or, the way that they talk about how it's going to be the most magically violent book yet, I mean, for all we know, everybody's going to make a power play,
Mm-hmm.
so it could be enough of another change that it's hard. Like there's so many different angles to take until it gets published.
It just seems to me that there's definitely going to be Thomas pushing against Lara, which can also happen with all the peace talks, and he wants to make Justine safe. And I really like the theory that Thomas takes up Amarakias.
Yeah.
Yeah, people keep saying that. I don't think it's going to happen. But then again,
I like it, though.
Huh?
I like it. I mean, his love is so tangible to
Symmetrical.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I understand that, but and you see, because you can make an argument against this too. But the whole idea that there's a demon living inside of him, how can he then pick up a sword of God?
You got a Jewish Knight of the Cross. I
Yeah,
don't
but
know.
that's different. That's different.
All
That's
bets are
not.
off.
But that's
Susan.
huh?
Susan, she was a vampire.
Yeah, but she was a half vampire fighting the demon technically, and even that's the argument against it.
Hmm.
But I mean, but about Butters, this is part of the reason why I love that Jim Butcher kind of follows the dogma of religion so closely. Butters, even though he's not practicing Jew, when your mother is Jewish, you're also Jewish.
Right.
So that alone, puts him all the way up to King David as far as being related, and so that makes sense. But I don't know. I just don't see it. I don't know.
I it's it's symmetrical, and I think that's part of what it has, its benefit. Obviously, I think that a lot changed after Turncoat and the ramifications with being captured by the Negotian, basically, kind of broken of his little, Tomas phase. But, at the same time, he was born on frickin' Valentine's Day. He has stayed with somebody who literally burns him because he loves her and she loves him. And she loves him so much that she sacrificed that protection so that they could be together. And I mean, if that's not love, like, your next bet is anybody else who basically has made sacrifices for that. I mean, there's pretty strong evidence at this point that Karen's not going to be one of the three knights. There's pretty strong evidence that Michael is going to be involved, but not one of the three knights. And it is potentially possible that I think he even went as far as to say is we're not going to find out until like the BAT or book 20 or something. Like, it's going to take that long. So maybe it's even somebody we haven't met. But out of existing characters, I really like the Thomas theory, and I think it's perfect. And part of it is because it fits so well, except for the one detail that you mentioned.
That one detail.
Sort of, he's sort of a demon.
But that's the thing.
Little detail.
That's the thing, and I'll let Chris and Alex speak after this. It's more than just a detail. Like the power of God and the white God and the angels, and we see that there's some really, really specific, strict limits on what they can and can't do, because otherwise it'd be crazy. It'd be chaos. There'd be, Uriel would be blinking people out of existence left and right. So that there has to be hard and fast rules. Otherwise, the swords are too OP, basically. If anybody can wield a sword, right? So I don't know. I get what you guys are saying, and it does follow. It does track that he was born on Valentine's Day, and just
Right.
I don't know, Chris. What do you think?
I don't know. Like, I like the theory. I get what you're saying. As far as the rules and stuff go, but it seems awesome to me. I don't know how to put it, that he would pick up the sword of love and sort of overcome, if not completely banish, the demon. I don't know what that would do for his supernatural power, because they always, it's always the drawing on the demon that actually gives him his super speed and strength and whatnot.
I didn't think of that, actually. The sword, or something wiping out the demon, because we know that's possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting detail as well. So, yeah, I mean, and to be honest, that I like that it fits inside of something that Butcher's done before. He sort of has done that with Harry. Harry had a coin, he had Hellfire, and then he lost that greater power, but it was supplemented by somebody else with something else. And so, on the one hand, if he picks up the sword or something happens and his demon is banished, that weakens him. But it is totally inside, as you put it, the White God, as they call him, the White God's power, basically, to totally supplant that quote-unquote evil power with something else of his own. So Michael's not superhuman in the sense that, he just works out, trains, that sort of thing. But, certainly he was a bit superhuman in Skin Game. And so it's, definitely within their power play to do something like that. And that's an interesting piece to keep in mind.
How funny do you guys think it's going to be? How funny do you guys think it's going to be that Harry's going to be an uncle? Right?
Well, he's getting used to being a dad, so
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah. I can't wait until Maggie meets Maggie. Right? That's the daughter's name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maggie meets the daughter of Justine. That's going to be funny.
Mhm. It'll be good. I'm excited. They're getting their little family, but they're also like it's targets. Like you thought he was worried about his friends before. Imagine trying to keep, an infant safe or
Well, hey, Susan did
pregnant
it.
Justine, so, right? She had a whole organization for her though, so I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it's going to happen.
God, it's such a curveball. All right. I don't know. Do we have anything else to say about that?
I have a growing thought the more I think about it right now.
Go for it.
Mab needs Harry because he can withstand the mantle. He can control it. And like he said, if she pisses him off, he will do the malicious compliance and do exactly what she says.
Mm-hmm.
I think something like that could be at play with Thomas, because if he has a Miraculous, he has to stay within the limits of using one of the swords.
Mm-hmm.
He can't use it for personal gain or judgment or anything like what Murphy did. And so it could be another restriction that he uses to balance himself. He'd probably be like less powerful in terms of supernatural, but he'll be more centered as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of seems like Mab also wanted him as a knight if Harry refused
Mm-hmm.
or died. And I think that could be at play a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point. I like it.
And something else we're kind of glossing over, even though Thomas had like a falling out at the end of Turncoat, I feel like he's kind of found solace in the fact that now Harry is a lot closer to him in terms of power and in terms of, like they're kind of both monsters now, and I think that really drew them together in a way we haven't seen yet. You guys know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean they talk about that in Cold Days.
Yeah.
That when they have their little bonding moment on the boat, and totally to derail this thought, I'm sorry, but it just occurred to me that we might also be missing the obvious answer as well. That very close to Thomas, there's somebody else who's pretty much gone through most of the same stuff, and just to throw it out there because it's crazy, but Justine could easily fit the bill as well in her own regard. So, and it's not like we haven't seen female wielders of the swords, so I don't know.
But
I
if
can
she's
figure out
descended
it
of a
doesn't have to be
king,
Thomas.
Is she related to a king? She
Yeah.
might be related to a queen.
Thomas is.
What if she's related to Cleopatra somehow?
Nice. I like it.
That is an interesting thought. I don't know though, because something else we're forgetting is that Justine is actually dependent on Thomas, right? Without Thomas, well, that's not true too. Maybe because apparently she was on medication, so maybe she did have it more under control. But you see in the earlier books that without Thomas, she basically goes nutso. So
Right.
Though that could also be a problem if she's pregnant and maybe the medication interacts badly with the pregnancy. She needs to go off, and then Thomas needs to feed on her, sort of. Nice and messy.
Thanks for putting that image in there, actually.
Mhm.
So, yeah, Thomas is going to have to find somewhere else to feed for 9 months, or this is going to get really weird.
Hey, it's totally okay, right? The baby doesn't disrupt the process, really. Wait. Oh, so it's weird now that I realize it. We've also kind of seen like a streak of pregnancies from or finding out about pregnancies from Butcher, right? In the last since changes. If you don't count Ghost Story, it's kind of been because it kind of comes into play in Cold Days. Yeah.
Well, yeah. When you say it like that, I was thinking that you were crazy, but then we got to remember about the parasite. So really,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had 3 pregnancies in 3 books, excluding Ghost Story. So
Also,
it's been Harry twice.
I can't wait to see the jokes from Harry to Justine. Like, yeah, I've been there.
Well, in Ghost
Right.
Story, Georgia would have been having her baby.
Oh, that's true.
Well, that's
Right.
why Will is running around doing things in Georgia's absence because she would have had an infant.
Wait, wait. Does it says that during the story that she was pregnant?
Well, in Aftermath, which is like the literal aftermath of changes in the
Right.
next 12 hours, Georgia is 7 months pregnant.
Oh man, I don't remember that at all.
So
Yep,
six
you're
months
right.
later, she's got a baby,
Wow. Dang.
and it's a
And
little
that
girl. We don't know her name yet.
right, and that does make sense because it had always bugged me that post changes we don't really have like a lot of them in it. Um, I'm trying to remember. Was it Aftermath when Billy and Karen go see Marcone and Marcone pretty much says like, "Don't confuse yourself with Dresden. Like you can't just walk in here and do that."
Yeah.
So yeah. But other than that, like he's been conspicuously absent, and that explains a lot.
Yeah.
I hope the werewolves come back because, especially in Aftermath, Billy got really kind of awesome, and they've been missing. And none of us talked about them in terms of like favorite characters, which I thought was kind of sad.
hmm Maybe Billy will take up the sword. That'd be really cool.
Nice. That would be interesting. I
Because
Yeah, lots to speculate for sure.
yeah, I mean we kind of see. I think the reason why we haven't seen Billy so much is because he's kind of fallen off the power scale, right? He's so much farther under Harry and Harry's, um, you know, the people Harry's fighting against now.
Sort of. I mean, what he can do in Aftermath, I thought was. I mean, are we talking about that in terms of spoilers?
Go for it. All the
Okay.
everything is spoilers. I mean,
Yeah,
Okay, because
we
he
just
can heal
we just
himself.
spoiled a future book.
That's true. But he got injured and then he healed it because it works on the same thought as the shifting. You
Right.
could heal yourself from a bullet wound. That's intense.
hmm,
I think it's
Yeah,
more just the baby.
right. It's not perfect. I think it's more the kid, and part of my thing for that actually too is that Butcher, like, he sort of does scale the power up, but I mean, come on, Karen threw down with Denarians and it wasn't just because she had a sword, and so like he also I think does a good job of trying to keep people in the same place, and even further, like, you know, it's not outside the realm of possibility that some punk off the street just offs you one day. Like, it's not like Dresden doesn't keep his eyes open for any of the mobsters or the police or something who would, in an RPG setting probably be like level one dudes, and Harry's up in the epic levels by now. But even still, he's got to keep his eyes open for that because it's still very real world. Billy is not, Harry's level, but the wolves are dangerous, scary creatures, and that's sort of shown in Aftermath, like Alex was saying.
hmm,
So,
that's true. So, peace talks. Justine is pregnant. Totally crazy. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about our favorite references and quotes. I think this is also probably something that we're going to hit again in a later episode, so don't worry about, only having a few right now. All right, who wants to go first? Don't make me go first, guys.
I think Alex should go first. So,
The
Me?
other Alex.
I'm volunteering you.
Go for it.
Quotes. I thought one of my favorite ones, in probably the entire thing, is in Small Favor. They're getting into Thomas's military-style Hummer, and Thomas asks, "Where are we going?" And Harry, in all of his funniness, goes into they treat me like royalty. And Thomas just says, "We're going to Burger King."
Yeah, that's a good one. I like it.
That was the whole thing with the spa. So I really like all those scenes.
Yeah.
I thought that was good.
Uh,
That's a good one.
Justin, you were talking about one earlier, and made us start.
Well, yeah, I part of why I didn't want to go first is because I have a couple. Because I'm a quotes guy. That's what I like about pop culture and stuff, and that's what I like about Butcher's stuff as well, is because he works in so many. And so you can do the ones that Butcher's referencing other pop culture. You can do the ones where he becomes pop culture. And so, like my favorite reference out of so let's go favorite references, first, or are we doing quotes? Whatever.
You go either one.
Okay, so I mean, favorite quotes I kind of mentioned last time. Certainly I think my all-time favorite quote out of the entire series is probably Injun Joe of all people in the fight scene, and both of my favorite quotes come from Turncoat and that Demon Reach part, and the whole when the Negloshi's taunting him, I'm not going to bind or banish you. I'm just going to kick your ass up between your ears. It's just so. It was so Yoda, like he just kind of shows up and it's like, we're going to throw down, and I have supreme confidence that I'm going to win. And I'm not going to do it the hard way. I was just going to whoop you, And so that, and then Ebenezer's quip earlier than that with Laura Wraith when she's doing the show and she's kind of pushing Harry around so that they don't know that they're allies and whatnot. And he's like, touch him again, bitch, and the only thing they're going to have left to bury you is your $500 shoes, And it's those are great quotes. And I mean, talking about earlier, we were talking before the show about how that sequence in Turncoat and obviously others are just so action movie, and even to the quotes, everybody's just got their bravado, they've got their game faces on, and those are my two favorites as far as quotes go.
That is a good one with Lara. Chris, give us a favorite quote or reference.
Mine is less of like a action movie one-liner. I kind of prefer it more when Dresden's just being a smartass. My favorite in the entire series, like I actually had to put the book down because I was laughing so hard, and it's probably not even going to be funny to most people, but when Marcone asks him what he's doing at the charity auction in Deathmask, and he says he's the world's foremost collector of velvet elvi.
Yeah.
Marcone asks him, wouldn't it be Elvis? And he says, yeah, but I have to use the Latin plural, otherwise I start muttering and calling things my precious. Like that.
Yeah.
Like once it clicked for me, because I'll admit it did take a few seconds for me to like, Elvis is, oh, that's funny. Like I had to put the book down because I was laughing.
Nice.
Okay, that's actually a perfect segue for something I wanted to mention.
Go for it.
It took several times for me to notice it, and just an offhand chance that I saw the name. John Ronald Reuel Tolkien. Ronald Reuel was the Summer Knight. He was an artist.
Nice.
And in Summer Night, when they were talking about him after he's dead, the obituary said that he was a master craftsman of fantasy worlds, and Justin went, I guess I'll say anything now that he's dead. And once it just clicked for me, I had to stop doing what I was just laughing. It's hilarious.
That's amazing. Wow, I had no idea. That's awesome.
Yeah, wow. That brings it to like a whole nother level.
It's just those kind of things that I like. It's got layers to it. It's funny.
Alright, I guess it's my turn. I just love the whole Jedi Knight thing. It's great. It's the best. I still can't believe that he actually did it, and it wasn't even like a subtle real thing. It was just like, no, he's just a Jedi Knight. This is happening.
Mm-hmm.
That was great. What did you guys think?
I agree. It's fantastic. So, I mean, it's the perfect thing for Butters as well, because they've been hinting at that. Even though you don't get into it a lot, I mean, you've got the polka, sure, but that's a different kind of nerd than you're used to seeing in this day and age. Like what you've got Weird Al, that's your polka nerd.
Mm-hmm.
But they talk about how in the gaming he's the dungeon master and his nerd outshines everybody else's. But that's another great quote too, by the way. But,
his nerd penis is larger than everyone else's.
Longer and harder than all of ours put together or something. So, yeah.
I just really want to see, does this mean that now the Denarians are going to have lightsabers? Because you can't really fight a lightsaber with a sword, right? So either Butters is going to be way overpowered, more powerful than them, or they're going to have to find some way to really up their game, right?
Uh, Potentially. I mean, you don't. I mean, it's hard to say because you don't really see them break into sword fight often with the Denarians. Like it happens to
Hmm.
be sure, but like Michael and Sonya, for example, they don't spar directly. When they fought Ursil back in Death Masks, like it was pretty much like swords against beast, in a way. And so there's some of that, but I think I read somewhere on the Dresden Files subreddit as well that one of the theories was that it's unbreakable, and so you don't have to worry about that anymore. And B, like because it's built with pure faith, and well, it's hope. In his case, no, it is faith, right? It's the sort of faith. Esperachius is the sort of hope, I think.
So
So
the Sword of Faith is his sword.
right now that it's pure faith, like it's not a lightsaber in the strict sense of the word where he can just cut into buildings, but like remains to be seen anyways. But the theory is that it would only cut Denarians, and so
Hmm.
it becomes this force of good that transcends its physical
Hmm.
limitations. So
Well, it's
we'll
interesting.
see.
Well, Chris or Alex, do you guys have anything else to say before I rebuttal?
No.
I think using a lightsaber, because there's always like something that you'll notice in like action movies when the hero and the bad guy are squaring off. Like if they're fighting hand to hand, they'll trade hits and stuff. But the second you give them a weapon that could actually do damage to each other, that's when they start missing a lot. And I think that will probably end up happening in a lot of Butters' fights, like where Michael or Sonya would uh, land a few punches, Butters is just going to not be able to hit with his lightsaber because that would do way too much damage and make the fight less interesting.
Hmm. But at the same time, it's a lightsaber, right? It only takes one hit,
Yeah,
so
it's
he only has to get lucky once.
lightsaber. It's there, so it's going to get used.
Hmm. Plus,
Yeah.
kind of as a counter to what you said, Justin, yeah, we don't see them fight with their swords a lot, but pretty much I think every time we've seen the knights fight the Denarians, it's been a sword fight, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think though because think about small favor, like does Michael cross swords with anybody
Definitely
on
does.
Demon Reach?
Yeah,
Because does he? Because
I'm pretty sure.
I mean, I mostly just remember him getting shot, to be fair. So,
I'm pretty
um,
sure that he either draws his sword. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe you're right.
yeah, and we know that Karen and Susan drew swords and definitely fought with people, but at the same time, like this, because of the swords and the power of the knights and that sort of thing, like crossing swords with them, the only people that you actually, or I should say, the only person you see have a prolonged sword fight with one of the knights is Nicodemus, and
Mm,
we don't know if his sword was like a counter example for that kind of power, or if it was just like a sword that he's used for 2,000 years or
mhm.
something. But they kind of made it seem like it was some kind of magical, special kind of thing, and now it's destroyed, in a similar way that Fidlachius had been broken. But I mean, when they, like small favor, Michael was completely outside of that entire fight at the aquarium. If he did cross swords with anybody, I think it was more like sword to balance out their supernatural powers. And I could be wrong because one of the things you also had was they would fight with oh my God, why can't I remember her name? I just read the book too. Anyway, Nicodemus's daughter.
Nidra.
Yeah.
Deidre.
Yes, thank you, Deidre. I was going a different fantasy, but anyway. So yeah, they had her hair, but she's kind of not in the picture anymore. But I could be wrong. It's just what I remember. So
Hmm. I mean, I guess it kind of remains to be seen. Definitely.
yeah,
Um, and as far as favorite, well, I guess I kind of gave a favorite. Oh, favorite line. I mean, my tip. I think I already talked about this. My usually the go-to line I give when I'm answering this question is like where they're planning to go raid the Deeps, and it's Ramirez and Harry, and they're talking about how much. I don't remember the conversation they're having up to that point, but they're just drinking beers, and they're both like "fuck them," and they clink. It's just the timing was really good. The way that Butcher nails that, it was good. It makes me laugh every time.
Yeah, I love that. And to be honest, like Ramirez in White Knight especially doesn't get enough credit because he almost all of his lines are one-liners.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
like now that in Ramirez, I have to paraphrase it because I can't remember it specifically, but it's like, you know, um, they talk about how they were thwarted by some handsome devil, or he's incredibly smart, intelligent, and charming, but he soldiers on as best as he can,
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. He's such a great character for quotables like that too.
It's also really great when Ramirez meets Laura for the first time, and she can see that he's a virgin, and it's like,
Yeah.
so, and she's like, "A virgin?" That was really funny. And you see Lara break her super calm, smooth demeanor, and she just like totally. Oh man, that was really funny.
I liked that sequence just because he was denying it until they're about to get killed.
Uh
I'm gonna die a virgin.
huh.
Yeah.
There was one in Proven Guilty that I liked about Ramirez. Uh, he was tasked to do the security for when they were taking Molly in, and Dresden was saying, "Well, that's why I wanted you. It's a beautiful and capable person." And he says, "No one is beautiful and skilled enough that you couldn't fuck it up."
Yeah.
That's true. I really like that relationship between Ramirez and Harry. I really hope we see him soon because he's one of my favorite characters.
He better be in Peace Talks or I'm gonna riot. So
Well, there's like a throwaway line in Skin Game, or was it Ghost Story? Where or was it Cold Days? Where anyway, somebody says Ramirez was badly injured.
right, I think it's Ghost Story. I think, because they talk about how like he, he had sort of shown up to look for Molly a couple of times, but it
Mhm.
didn't look like his heart was in it. I know
Mhm.
they mentioned that, um, and that he sort of has like all of North America right now because
Mhm.
Dresden's not there. So
Oh, that's another thing. I really can't wait to see in peace talks like what's happened with the White Council because they really just went to shit. Like they totally collapsed basically, and nobody's really talked about that or kind of we haven't seen any. But they totally just collapsed. They're pretty much done.
well, yeah, I mean, if you take the timeline from Deadbeat through Turncoat, basically, they lose like 75% of their numbers or something crazy is what they make it seem like because they
Mhm.
lose like 75% of the wardens in the events at Sicily, which is sort of you get a little bit more of that if you read Warcry for those who haven't.
Mhm.
And then, so I mean, they straight up lose like 75% of the wardens there. Then they draft all the kids,
Mhm.
and in Turncoat, anybody who was in the main room, they mentioned like you lose another like 50 or whatever wizards there, and
Yeah.
that's like when I read it the first time through, I completely missed that. I was like, okay, we saw two guys get stabbed because light and they were dumb.
Mhm.
But he actually mentions later that there was like 50 wizards died while the senior council was wrangling with that with the Mordite fiend.
Mhm.
So like yeah, they definitely got gutted, and then you have we don't know all the ramifications from changes with Ariana and her disease. It seemed mostly like a weakness type thing, but
No,
who
that's what
knows?
I think it's really post changes after they put in what the guy in place of La Fortier,
Right.
and then you really start to see like because up until that point I think the White Council's still kind of holding it together, but after that, like we still don't know what's happened to Anastasia. Uh,
Right.
Chris and Alex, what do you guys think?
I never actually really thought about uh, White Council in terms of numbers,
Hmm.
just because they were just always this big looming presence for Harry. But yeah, now that you run it down, they do on multiple books say they lose a significant portion. That is interesting. They sort of like kind of drifted to the back. Like I don't much care about them, honestly. That's probably like some contact disdain that I have for them from reading from Harry's point of view. Um, but yeah, it'll be interesting in peace talks to see like who the representatives are and if anyone actually acknowledges that they may not be the force to reckon with that they were pre-war with the Red Court.
I think it's kind of important to remember that the White Council was not meant to be a, like an army. It's just a group of wizards and trying to make sure that the wizards don't get too bad. And that was it. So
Hmm.
when they're in a war, they're not an army. They can't really do it. And then they're stuck in another war after they nearly were eradicated in the first one. And they're not like a world power anymore. I would think. It's just they're not meant to be either.
No, well, I think they were. They were at one time a world. Like they're kind of their own nation, right?
Yeah, but not anymore
Yeah.
because they weren't armies. They were just guys that wanted to like brew potions, live in their towers, and research things, and that was it.
Hmm.
I think you're right for the vast majority of like the wizarding populace, but don't tell Ebenezer and the Merlin that they're not a power. Like heaven forbid you were in the room having that conversation with them, because even despite losing their numbers, I don't think for an instant that the Merlin's going to roll over. He would fight to the last man as much as he tried to avoid it, as much as he politicked and everything. You really saw a different side of him for all of 5 minutes in changes, and that's one of the things I want them to go back to is like he was ready to throw down. He was going to take it to the Red Court's teeth. So when they evaporated, what did he do? Like, what did he do with all that pent up, energy or anything? And one of the other things that I think, I wish they had gone into more detail. I wish we didn't have to wait, 3 books to find out what's been going on. But they have been putting in breadcrumbs that part of the reason why the White Council hasn't been flexing its muscle is actually more to do with the Fomor, and that they're all bottled up in Europe, because that's kind of a throwaway line. Not that Butcher does those, but it's for that book, it's kind of just one of those things that I think they're talking about in the same breath with where's Ramirez in the White Council. It's, well, they're all hiding in Europe because that's their power base, and Ramirez is stuck in LA mostly, and he's made some token appearances, but I think the core is still there, and I think we got rid of. I mean, we did lose a lot of people, but I don't think for an instant that the White Council would roll over and just be like, oh well, we fell from grace, we're not a world power anymore, type of thing. They had economic and knowledgeable power as much as um, uh, what's the group from Warcry anyway. So the researchers, I mean, they had
The
their help.
Venatori.
Yeah, the Venatori. Thank you. So the Venatori and St. Giles, which know more also, but it's kind of looking bad for the home team for the good guys right now. But at the same time, I don't think at all that the White Council is ready to roll over for anybody. If anything, they might just double down. But maybe that's because for me, that's what I hope. you know,
Hmm.
because taking it through all the way to the end, I think Dresden at the very least is going to wind up senior council or some kind of equivalent, and I would like to see him turn that ship. But we'll see. That's kind of my thing.
Yeah, kind of like them to want him on the senior council, and he tells them to piss off. But
That would be a good answer too.
I mean, you say that don't tell Merlin or Ebenezer that they're not a power. Yes, those two are very powerful. And Rashid, I say that they're all in like the same group of scary powerful, but they are not the rest of the wizards.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And it's just, I mean, they were a very strong power, and then they got taken down, and now they're being strangled by the Fillmore. So in peace talks, they're going to be at a vulnerable side of bargaining, and that's all I see.
yeah, and that's a possibility. And I like that you brought up Rashid, because that'll help me nuance kind of what I'm talking about. But like, I think Ebenezer and the Merlin have the kind of hubris and the kind of like faith in their organization that doesn't necessarily fall to Harry and Rashid. Like Harry knows that don't cross the White Council. Certainly you can see what Harry has done by himself. Not that he's like a poster child per se, but like Rashid, I think would be more likely to just melt off into the Winter Court somewhere and keep doing his gatekeeper duties than, stand the line and fight with the rest of the White Council. Not that he wasn't ready to throw down in small favor, sorry, in turncoat, because he showed up first to have that conversation, and he did basically dismantle Harry and his group right as they showed up at Demon Reach. But I don't know, like if you were having that conversation with Rashid, he'd definitely play it more low key. I know Ebenezer's kind of hacker, and certainly the Merlin, what we saw in changes, in my opinion, anyway. But yeah, but you're right. They're not the whole council, and most of the other wizards might just take their ball and go home if it meant that they could live for more reading later. So.
True. Does anyone else have favorite quotes or references?
I had a couple others. I was waiting for references to come back around, but certainly Skin Game with the Octakongs and the Indiana Jones reference is one of my favorites. And then I think my other two favorites are very briefly the Firefly reference we get in Cold Days with Bob. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm not supposed to be the guy that doesn't get the references, where he's like, quiet Harry or you'll go to the special hell. Mm-hmm. It's very subtle, but I chalk that up as his one Firefly reference. It's Our Mrs. Reynolds is the episode, because Shepherd Book is talking to Captain Mal that if he takes advantage of Saffron, I think that's her name anyway, that he'll go to the special hell. And then in Proven Guilty, I think has the other, like, between the two, I think, or between the series, Skin Game and Proven Guilty have like the most references per book, more or less.
Oh, yeah.
And in Proven Guilty, you have, the xenomorph and get away from her, you bitch, and, just everything. So, yeah. And the last one was Day Off, because it doesn't get enough credit, and I don't think we've talked about it yet, but it's a side job story. And you get the Harry Potter references with the punk kids, and other quotes is, one of my favorites was then the dog got me where the dog always gets a man. And even before that, when the kids are there and they're like, show us your power, show us your magic, he's like, he pulls out his 44 and he's like, how about I make your windows disappear? So, yeah. There's a lot of good ones.
Yeah. I have actually never seen Firefly. No.
Get out.
I'm disbanded from my own podcast. No, yeah, but I knew that was a reference, and it's funny that Harry hasn't heard of it. I guess because it's so recent. But you'd think now that Harry is the Winter Knight, and he can kind of get around some of those. Those issues. Like, if he really wanted to get a TV, even to watch it just long enough to watch a movie, like, he could get an endless amount of TVs, right? If he wanted to. You know what I'm saying?
I think he just needs to borrow Bob.
Yeah, that's more Bob.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
got
they
Scully
do
now, or whatever her name is.
What were you saying, Justin?
I was just saying, I mean, that's one of the loose ends from Skin Game, is that they all have several $1 million now that they potentially could be working with. So money could just not be an issue for him, even though still the mortal wizard versus technology thing definitely is. So.
I really felt like that wasn't as much money as we were meant to believe it is, right? Several $1 million isn't really that much money. I mean, to go from like $0 to several $1 million is a lot of money, but I don't know. I felt like that was another weak part of Skin Game. That it just seemed weird to me. It was like, okay, he's got like $5 million. That's awesome. But he's still not like, you know what I'm saying? Because when you think of the supernatural world, when you think of the White Court, like you think billions and billions and billions of dollars.
I think it was 7 million.
Yeah.
2 million from Nicodemus, and then split about 10 million with Murphy.
Hmm.
So you should have about 7 million, and that's just the seven number that comes up again.
Hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, I wasn't convinced they actually got their payout from Nicodemus because I don't know if that had happened in advance, but
Yeah, I don't know about that either, but I like the number.
yeah, it's good. And I mean, otherwise you're right because the theory was a backpack was 20 million, and I'm sure there's a little bit of, difference there because we don't know diamonds are, variable and whatnot, but assuming 20 million, they had 5 shares if I remember right. So, that's 4 million a piece or so. And I mean, that's not like
Hmm.
it's not Batman rich, right? But there's certainly to Harry is enough that it could take him through the rest of a normal mortal life if he just didn't buy crazy amounts of things and kind of took care of it. And certainly for a wizard, though, it's even potentially better because if he just sits on that and puts it in the bank, the next 100 years compounding interest, like
Hmm.
he's gonna be pretty set, assuming he doesn't just like blow it all on magical trinkets or something like that, because he's still supposed to be getting back pay from being a warden.
Hmm.
Rashid talks about how there's sort of precedence for this sort of thing, and he can help him with the paperwork. That happens
What
in cold
caused
days.
that
So
precedent? When did that situation ever happen before that someone came back from the dead?
they, I'm gonna have to look. I would have to find my copy of Cold Days, but he straight up says that like it's not unheard of for this to happen,
Hmm.
so or something like that, where like maybe it's presumed dead is kind of the way that Rashid was saying it, but there's definitely like he Dresden was declared dead, and now there's paperwork to help him with that because Dresden remarks when he's with Mother Summer at the gate that holy crap, Rashid just gave me like his gift to me was dealing with White Council paperwork, like
Yeah, I
so
mean, I remember the exchange, but like that seems like a significant thing for it to have happened beforehand.
yeah. I don't know. Did the Merlin, like the original Merlin, did he ever do that? Did he ever die and come back? Seems like a thing he would have done. So
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder if there is anyone else. Well, a lot of people are saying that Cal is probably Simon, right?
I like that idea.
Yeah.
I kind of like it as well, actually, because it's devious and sinister. So yeah,
I don't know. That's
I like
another
a lot
thing.
better than Dresden as Cowl.
Yeah, that's pretty dumb. I don't think that's true. I think any of the theories where it's like Dresden came back in time as himself. No, I'm sorry. It just feels like so like Butcher would just be going way too far out of his way to make that happen. I think. All right. Any other references, Chris? Or do you have anything else?
Uh, I do not.
No, we're good, Alex.
I'm sure I can think of more, but we can move on.
You want to give one? Well, because it's actually been about an hour, so I think
Oh,
we're gonna wrap it up. Unless anybody else has one more, go for it, Alex.
well, I was just thinking again of my favorite part of Ghost Stories. What happens if the bad guy gets what she wants? She wins?
yeah,
Yeah, that's another thing. We haven't seen very much of, or we haven't seen what's her name, the Landside at all, right?
right.
Uh,
Not since
right.
Ghost Story.
Yeah.
So
I wonder what's going on with that. Everybody wonders what's going on with that. What do you guys think?
Well, she was
maybe
mentioned.
go ahead.
She was mentioned in Cold Days. Like Leah told Molly that Dresden was coming back. Uh, so she's doing something.
Hmm.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's grasping at straws and kind of like disparate things, but it's possible that Mab had Leah holding down the fort on some of what Maeve was neglecting, but Molly clearly says that she's got like a century's worth of backlog that she's got to deal with, or several hundred years, or something like that. And so Mab's had her very busy elsewhere, which is why she didn't show up in between Cold Days and Skin Game until pretty much the end, is because Mab had her just running through a to-do list, So um, I don't know. It'll be interesting, but I think that Mav obviously is not telling us everything because when has she ever? But you get a taste of that through Molly because she's got her very busy with something, and my only thought is that she's got her very busy preparing, everything else that Dresden doesn't need to have his hands in directly. Like Dresden's busy in Hades' vault getting weapons. Molly's busy laying groundwork elsewhere for other things. That's gonna be a big deal. So.
Mhm. I guess pretty much the sum of this podcast is we all can't wait for peace talks, right? This
That
episode.
is today's theme.
Yeah. All right. This has been a great episode. It's going to be up soon. The audio version will be up soon, probably tomorrow. I still have to get the RSS feed submitted to iTunes so that people can look it up there. But you can still use the RSS feed on the site. Most podcast catchers, there'll be like a place you can drop in RSS feeds. So just for now, I know it's a pain, but just go ahead and do that. And eventually, I'm gonna get us up on iTunes. Check out the site, DresdenFilesPodcast.com, Twitter, Twitter.com/DresdenCast. You can send us an email, DresdenFilesPodcast@gmail.com. We're all around on /r/Dresden Files. There'll be a post about this episode coming up probably tonight, and hopefully we'll see you guys all soon, right? Thanks, guys.